Namaskar, this is Late Edition. On the show tonight, we'll discuss face-to-face group interaction that Finance Minister P. Chidambaram had on Google Plus Hangouts. Now, the Finance Minister P. Chidambaram used Google Plus Hangouts to hang out with netizens and discuss his budget. And he responded to questions on Budget 2013-14 directly. And he said government had set priorities on three fronts, which are fiscal consolidation, getting investment, and rekindling the engine of growth. He also said he was hopeful of achieving a 40,000 crore rupee target for fiscal, for disinvestment in this fiscal. And Anand Mahindra of Mahindra & Mahindra, Jahangir Aziz of JP Morgan, and Amit Singhal of Google were among those who participated. Let's sign in.
In a first-of-its-kind interaction, Finance Minister P. Chidambaram on Monday responded to citizens' questions on Budget 2013-14 directly by joining a multi-person online video conference, Google Hangout. Starting the chat, Chidambaram said that given the restricted economic space, the government has tried to do its best. He added that he had set priorities on three fronts: fiscal consolidation, getting investment, and rekindling the engine of growth.
I did not cross the red line for the current year. I shall not cross the red line for the next year. It will be kept at 4.8% or below. The current account deficit is more worrying. We have to actively woo the investor to India.
Exuding confidence on achieving this investment target, Chidambaram said that he is hopeful of achieving 40,000 crore target this fiscal, and he has lined up companies which will be disinvested in this fiscal.
For the next year, I have lined up the list of companies which will be disinvested in. I know exactly which company, what amount. We have even a sequence laid out. So we will raise 40,000 crore.
Questions about reining current account deficit and fiscal deficit, improving investment climate in the country, public-private partnership arrangements for farming activities were asked on the Google Plus Hangout. In recent days, government is trying to reach out to people using the digital medium, and to know the pulse of the people, it is a welcome move.
Clearly, the economy was the main emphasis of the Finance Minister's social hangout. But the big news out of this whole development was the rise of social network as a new form of communication. Hopefully, we'll see more such press conferences happening in future. Siddhant Sibal, DD News, New Delhi.
Well, and to discuss this unique press conference, in a sense, through social networking, we are joined in the studio by M.K. Venu, Managing Editor of the Financial Express. Rajat Kathuria is Director and Chief Executive of the Indian Council for Research and International Economic Relations. And Siddhant Sibal is our correspondent who follows telecom and IT and planning, and he was there at the Google Plus Hangouts press conference. We'll start with you, Mr. Venu. This is face-to-face as opposed to one-on-one. And I know that you interviewed both the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister after the budget, one-on-one. So how would you look at this face-to-face, where he actually interacts with people from across the world, actually, it could be?
Yeah. This is really, Mark, this is for the first time the UPA is attempting to go over the heads of the regular mainstream media, which has not particularly been very kind to them in the last 2 years. And they are trying to get across to a much bigger community out there through the medium of the Google. Multimedia experience it is visual, there's TV there, there's Twitter, there's everything there.
Okay.
And this is also born out of, if I may, politically, if I may say so, the Congress's, the need that they felt, which was expressed at the Jaipur the conference, Congress, that they should use the social media optimally to get across to the people, because they've realized that in the business of communication, in the business of, they have been slightly behind the curve, especially in reaching out to the youth, younger people. And by the way, the person who did the Google Hangout first was, in the Indian context, was actually Narendra Modi, who did it in July 2012. In some sense, he was faster at getting at the social media. Although it began with, this whole experience began with Obama in early 2012. And apparently Obama within a week got 700,000 views on YouTube.
Okay.
And apparently yesterday's finance minister's experience, this conference, went on television also. And I'm told they got millions of, a couple of 3-4 million views. Apparently
and it's also because it's narrowcasting on the budget directly, so obviously there are a lot of people interested. But tell us a little bit about this, since, you know, I mean, it's also accessed on Android phones, Mr. Kathuria, and, you know, we don't have too much density in terms of broadband connections, but over a period of time, perhaps this is going to be the way video conferencing and, you know, press conferencing in the sense is going to be done.
Absolutely. I have no doubt about that, that technology is going to become the way to communicate. And given India's success in voice, and we are trying to replicate our success of voice in data, in video conferencing, we haven't been successful so far. But I have no doubt that if we get our policies right, we could become successful even in data. Our broadband connections are abysmal when you compare them with world standards. And our definition of speed is also pathetic when compared to world standards.
Okay.
But we have to change all of this to make this experience that we've had with Mr. Chidambaram and the Google Hangout much more interactive and much more positive in a sense.
All right.
And much more engaging. But let me also say that, you know, as India becomes younger, as India becomes more technology savvy, I think it's almost a no-brainer to say that this is the way that you have to reach out to people. It's going to be a, you know, lower transactions cost to reach out to people, to communicate with the younger audience that you're going to communicate with.
Right.
And this has to be the way.
Can I add to what Rajat is saying? You know, there are 800 million mobile subscribers today, right?
Right.
About 10% of this would constitute smartphones. It's only a matter of time. If you have broadband, and if you have smartphones, and then those tablets, about 100 million already. So if you have the pathway, you have 100 million smartphones to directly connect with, which is more than all newspaper, television, viewership.
This would be a pretty large hangout then, because already all of them are on Twitter and Facebook.
I think we'll all be out of our job in terms of the platform that we're using.
Okay, let's bring in Siddhant here. Siddhant, you were there. Tell us a little bit now about how government is actually using social networking, the social media. We know that the Planning Commission has been using it. They used Facebook, and also, in fact, Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia has been on some sort of a platform like this. We know that Narendra Modi has been on the platform, as Mr. Venu was saying. The IMB ministry has also used some. And we know that a lot of government departments are already, apart from websites, are now on Twitter and Facebook. So tell us a little bit about this,
Well, this was my third press conference, third online press conference. The first by Mr. Sam Petroda. He even responded to my question. The second was by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And the third, the current one, which happened yesterday at 8 o'clock, Finance Minister P. Chidambaram's Google Hangout. Of course, it got a good response. Even Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, the response was good. That time the issue was community radio. Well, I would say that this is a new way of communicating, especially when it comes to the youth, because you know, everyone, including me, is on Facebook, Twitter, Google Hangout, and right now while I'm just chatting to you, I can update my status that watch late edition today, and we're discussing the Google Hangout issue. And well, I just want to point out some facts. Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, who is on Twitter and Facebook both, he has a following of 4 lakh people. While the US President Barack Obama has a following of 27 crore 92 lakh people. And I would also compare organizations. The BBC has a follower on Twitter around 3 crore 22 lakh people. Well, Doordarshan is also on Twitter, though its following is just 6,000 because we just started initially.
I think even the Prime Minister is not too old on Twitter, and you know, I think the US President has been there a longer time. But Mr. Venu, yes, well, the US President has also used this platform, the Google Hangouts platform, twice. In fact, he used it after his State of the Union address. And we are seeing now this is the new form of participatory democracy, actually. You know, but there is a feeling that government itself actually is, the policies of government are decided in, you know, in those departments, amongst those bureaucrats, amongst the policy makers. So really, do you think that, you know, much is coming out of this? Is it really a two-way communication, or would you say that government is planning to do one-way communication through this?
No, Mark, it will become two-way, because if media itself gets decentralized, if YouTube, you could say your piece and put it on YouTube, and if from the other side, if people respond, like this Google Hangout, it's clearly a two-way.
Right.
Now, the thing about the new media is that it increasingly becomes interactive.
Yes.
So there is uploading more than there is downloading. That is the logic.
Right.
So when there is uploading, when uploading exceeds downloading, then governments will come under pressure. That's what my take. Because in a traditional media like a newspaper that I work for, we just produce a paper and at best we carry letters after a lag. And we don't even carry all the letters. But here there is ample space for people to just say their piece,
right?
And for the governments and other constituencies to respond.
Can I also just add to that?
Sure.
I know that this will become two-way, this will become interactive over time as the technology matures. And as Venu was saying, we are able to upload. Right now, uploading speeds are not very good, and so we have problems in uploading, and people may not be as patient as you would like them to be in order to upload whatever content they have.
True.
But it's a start. I think this is a new technology, and it's, I think, extremely important for the government to begin to communicate the rationale, the basis of its decision to the people. I mean, of course, they've been doing it earlier, but this is a much more efficient method to actually tell people that this is why you've taken, for instance, in your own program, right at the beginning of your clip, you showed Mr. Chidambaram saying that I needed to communicate these 3 things that I have done in the budget. I want to get more investment into India, I want to control the current account deficit, and I want to engage in fiscal consolidation. Now, these are 3 things that he wishes to communicate to a wider audience, and all the rest is,
so
going
you
toward
prioritize very clearly and you reach the right audience. We need to take a short commercial break. After that, there's still so much more to discuss. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Siddhant, you seem to enjoy these virtual town hall experiences, being for 3 of these press conferences already. Now, tell us, content seems to be monitored to some extent, and it also can be controlled because in too many, questions, first of all, an advertisement is put out, questions keep coming in well before the event takes place, and then the person concerned, here the minister, can basically choose to answer which questions he wants.
Well, of course, the criticism has been leveled against people who are doing these press conferences that they're selectively answering the questions. And this is, well, we can say criticism in a sense true, because the person can actually select the question that this question is easy to answer, which is not possible when you are actually offline, you are doing a press conference. When I go for offline press conferences, I can ask question and actually make the person uncomfortable, and he has to make some answer or probably say no, and of course that becomes new sometimes. But here he can selectively answer the questions, but the person, in all these press conferences which have taken place, the person has said we cannot answer every question, and people might be taking it in a wrong manner that they are not answering the questions they are asking them.
Okay, let's go into some of the content. In fact, Mr. Venu, he talked in his very first answer about fiscal consolidation. This is the most important thing. And attracting investment to deal with the current account deficit and to restart the growth engine. These were the three priorities he talked about. Why is the current account deficit such a big issue in this current time? Because that's really what ultimately, the entire thing focused more on the current account deficit.
Even in my interview, he did say that current account deficit is a much bigger worry. Because for 2-3 reasons, current account deficit has widened to over 5% of GDP, which is way beyond what is a comfort zone. Comfort zone is about 2.5, maybe between 2.5 and max 3. But going beyond 5 means you need about $90 billion of net capital inflows a year. That makes India very vulnerable, because you have to get $95 billion a year to keep the balance of payments in the right shape. Now, this year we got FII inflows in the stock markets for about 30 billion, 25, 27. But next year, if you don't get that, your currency could come under pressure. So therefore, he has taken enough steps in the budget to attack current account deficit. One is that gold imports. He's trying to discourage gold imports through a set of measures.
Right.
Number two, he's correcting the diesel prices to the market levels. That itself would disincentivize excessive consumption of oil, and oil is the biggest item of import, which is the cause of the widening current account deficit.
Right.
And oil imports are like
He also
$140
talked
billion.
about increasing investment, Mr. Kathuria, and you know, he talked about talking about these global tours. He was basically looking west, you know, and our country has been trying to look east. You know, the countries he mentioned were all in the west. Actually, he didn't even bother about the east. But where do you think our investment can actually come in at this point of time? We are also looking east, aren't we?
That's right. We've signed, India has recently over the last few years signed FTAs with Japan, with Korea, and Singapore, and we are exploring the possibilities of other East Asian countries of doing an FTA with them. And if you look at the Japanese investment that is coming in and that is likely to come in, so there's a lot of Japanese investment that could come into India. I mean, the West traditionally has been the highest investor in India, but given the change of the center of gravity that is taking place towards Asia, I think one cannot now isolate our interest only to the West. We'll have to look east as well.
Okay.
But I think, let me add also, in terms of content, attracting investment is extremely important, because as Venu said, you need money, net capital inflows, to finance your current account deficit, which is reaching positions which might put us in terms of external pressures to external vulnerabilities.
Okay.
So I think we need to control our current account deficit. Now, controlling or managing the current account deficit can be done in two ways. One is to disincentivize imports, increase the duty on gold. But I think that's short term.
Okay.
In a long-term way, to control the current account deficit, you need to push exports. You need to push exports, and for exports, we have a whole host of things that could be done.
We'll talk a little bit more about this, but we need to take another short commercial break. Do stay with us. We'll talk about how to, you know, bridge this current account deficit after the break. Welcome back. Well, Mr. Venu, you were talking about reducing imports and increasing exports. Now, there are some imports that perhaps we can do without. In fact, the finance minister was saying that if we, you know, don't import gold for 1 year, we'll reduce our current account deficit by half.
Absolutely.
So, are there some sort of, you know, methods that we can do this to stop, you know, to reduce imports?
I'll give you one example. Our average would be in the region of 20-25 billion until 2008 annual. Suddenly 2008-9, even so, suddenly 2011-12, it doubled. It climbed to 60 billion. So that extra 30 billion, one doesn't know it. People are buying it for. Now, one thesis is that because of inflation, people are finding gold as a best hedge against inflation, and because other financial products are not giving returns. Now, we have to then create growth to move to other financial products away from gold. That itself will lop off about 1.5% from the current account deficit.
Okay.
The other big reason, Mr. Rajat, is exports. If you remember, we were discussing the economic survey here.
Right.
And on the cover of economic survey, there's a graph which Raghuram Rajan has put, which shows all other emerging economies after
doing better in exports than we are.
Yeah, after growing, you know, some 20 years, their exports boomed, productivity and competitiveness.
Sure.
In India's case, it hasn't taken off.
Sure.
So that is also, I think, a reason for current account deficit structurally moving up to such high levels.
Right, but Mr. Kathuria, you know, I mean, another concern is inflation. And inflation, it seems, could also have the advantage as far as it, because you can also earn greater revenues as a result of inflation, isn't it? Because when you tax, you get a higher tax rate as well.
Right. I mean, but
that's a theory.
You know, in terms of the inflation, you know, allows the government to reduce its fiscal deficit because your denominator becomes higher, and therefore you can show a lower fiscal deficit. But I think inflation is a grave concern in India today. We are running CPI at the retail level. CPI shows a 10% inflation rate, and WPI, although lower, has still been in the neighborhood of 7% for a long period of time. So I think inflation is something that we need to address. Our policymakers need to address inflation.
Okay.
And a lot of that inflation is coming from food.
Right.
And there are structural reasons why that inflation is high. Now, this debate between whether monetary policy is going to be effective in addressing the concerns of inflation, or whether we have to look at long-term structural issues,
right.
While this debate goes on, I think we have to increase our investment in agriculture. We have to improve agriculture.
Right. Finally, Siddhant, Chidambaram finally also talked about the internet growing very rapidly, and he said that the next generation is already, very net savvy, and he was talking about a possibility of a virtual political party. Now, if, any such political party comes into existence, will you join it?
Well, of course, I'll have to just check it out, the ideology of that political party. As of now, there are many groups and societies and communities on Facebook and on Twitter, but of course, Orkut also.
Yeah.
But I would actually say internet, and especially the social network, is a very powerful medium. We saw what happened in 2011. A whole revolution started across the Middle East because of one tweet. So I can actually say one tweet can start a revolution, can change the world. And of course, we can have a press conference on social networking. So we can have programs like Late Edition also on social network websites such as Google Hangout.
Right, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Siddhant. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on Late Edition. And while India may have only about 22 million broadband users, social networking is definitely picking up fast. And through this form of interaction, government gets to interact directly with people without a journalistic interface. Now, some of the questions asked too, in this press conference were important in understanding an aspirational India. And through the interaction, Chidambaram focused largely on reducing the current account deficit. And that's the deficit when a country's total imports are greater than its total exports of goods, services, and transfers. And he said that one import that India could do without is gold. Well, if we don't import gold for a year, he said, and I said this earlier, the current account deficit would come down by half. You've been watching Late Edition. Time to sign out. Thanks very much for your time.